So you want to geek out, get your nerd on with large language models, with generative AI. Perhaps you want to start to develop in some small way, maybe in some large way, some apps using generative AI. Perhaps you just want to really understand them and get to grips with them, and also you don't want to spend very much money. You don't want to pay for app keys. You don't want to send money and subscription payments off to any particular provider. Also, maybe got some sensitive documents you don't want leaving your machine, your premises. You want to keep what you've got isolated. You don't want to be sharing potentially sensitive information, your data with anyone else. So, um, what do you do? Well, I think a good place to start is Olama, which is in effect an execution environment for large language models. And what it does is it allows you to pull large language models and other language models from the open source community and execute them where you are. So no going off to the cloud for your large language models anymore. Run them locally. And what it does is it exposes an API which you can then use to programmatically interact with your language model. And so that means you can then incorporate your large language model into your app development. We're also going to use the very model that we download and get running in Olama as our AI coding assistant too. Because the model we're going to use is supposedly very, very good at coding. And also another attribute of the model we're going to use is it's quite small relative to other models, yet it's quite power packed. So that is the Phi 4 model. Um, we're going to use that to build. We're going to use that as the large language model. It's a relatively small large language model. But we're going to use that model as the core, the generative AI core of our app. But also we're going to use that model to help us write the code to create the app. So this should be fun. It's worth noting before we go on, the reason why I'm looking to use small at every opportunity is that as small as I can get away with, anything that is really efficient and capable of running on quite old hardware. I'm not very privileged when it comes to the kit that I've currently got. I have a 2017 Asus gaming laptop, so it does have a GPU. It's a 2017 GPU. So I've got NVIDIA hardware. It's never been used for gaming though. I, I rarely ever hear the fan spin up from the GPU because mainly this laptop's life has been about, for some reason, I don't know why I bought a gaming laptop. I don't really do much gaming. This laptop has almost entirely been used for Office 365 or Google Workspaces, or mostly stuff that could have been done on probably a Chromebook. So anyway, it's this laptop is now going to experience things that it has never previously. It's got 16 um, gigs as well, so it's you know just about the spec to be able to run it sufficiently quickly enough a large language model, which is why I'm choosing Phi 4 in this case for something which is going to be a coding assistant, but also something which is going to be the heart of um, an app which I think will play to Phi 4's strengths. When you're choosing a large language model, they're tuned and set up and focused on a particular job quite often. We're going to be using another language model as well, uh, Nomic Text Embed or Nomic Embed Text. That's a very small language model which I'm going to use alongside Phi 4 because that's going to be used for doing text embedding, which we'll get to eventually, and we'll talk about that soon in this video. But first of all, what we need to go and do is download Olama. So let's navigate to the olama.com website. Once you get there, you can see that there is a download Olama button, and you get a choice of operating systems, Mac OS, Linux, Windows. For me, it's Windows, so I'm going to click download for Windows. Again, I've got Windows 10. Luckily, allowing me to still live in this world with Windows 10, so that's good. So that'll now take a while to download. Once it's downloaded, I will launch that installer. We get the options to choose whether it's an ARM architecture machine that I've got or an x64 Intel based machine. I choose that, Windows 10. It's installing. Once it's installed, we'll choose the options to have it run. Right, once it's running, it will appear in the system tray. There'll be a little llama head in the system tray. That will indicate that the Ollama service is running, and that'll be at a particular port, so we'll be able to go to localhost and then that port to interact with Ollama. Alternatively, we can fire up a PowerShell, and then in there we can interact with Ollama. We can see what commands are available to us, and ultimately what we're going to do, not ultimately, but initially what we're going to do is pull the 5.4 model from the open source community. So that's all configured for us within Ollama. All we do is type Ollama pull 5.4. So that now will take some time because the 5.4 model is about 9 gigs. So it's downloading 9 gigs of higher dimensional linear algebra. I imagine in my head, this. I can't imagine actually higher dimensional space in my head. I can imagine a three-dimensional space in my head. So I'm imagining this massive three-dimensional matrix, which is actually multiple more dimensions matrix of weights, parameters, which are basically scalars, vectors, tensors. I can see that in my head, but I actually really can't imagine higher dimensional, more than 3 dimensions. I can't visualize, but this massive amount of data, which will be laid out as a transformer architecture, which is multiple layers of multi-dimensional, higher dimensional linear algebra. There's this big blob or blobs of data basically are now coming down and landing on my disk, filling up my disk. So I'll have 9 gigs of LLM on my disk, which will then have to be loaded into memory for it to work. So we'll just wait first for that to download. That's now downloaded, and whilst we're in the mood for pulling models, we'll also pull the much smaller helper model that we're going to use in our app as well. So I'm going to type in Ollama pull nomic embed text, and that won't take half as, or even less. That won't take very long to download. Right, it's downloading. That's going to be arriving pretty soon because that's very small actually. I'm going to be using that with a database called ChromaDB, which is a vector database, which is going to allow us to do some clever prompt engineering by providing context within the prompt we use from our own documents as part of the app. So we're going to provide our app with some documents, the LLM, and then context pulled from our documents, and then supplied to the LLM. So we're gonna be doing what is called retrieval augmented generation as part of our app, so that we can specialize the 5.4 LLM. We're not doing anything. It's not changing that. We're just going to give it more information, more context in our prompt via relevant information from our documents via text embedding. So we'll do that. So that's downloaded,